It should be online. If not, I'll post it.
Come on. Nothing better than
No, I know. Ron, does this mean we're not gonna have a podium?
What?
Does this mean we're not gonna have a podium for the speakers? That's a good point.
There's no mic on here anyways.
We're streaming live, Rob.
Everybody ready?
We're like a weather and traffic report. Every 15 minutes, sports report. Little bar goes. This picture of it.
We now call this first 19th session meeting of the Student Services Finance Committee to order. It is 6:33 on May 7th, 2012. We are in the hearing room on the 4th floor of the Student Activity Center, and Chief Justice Fifield is presiding. I am serving as the acting chair of the SSOC as designated by the ASM bylaws, and Vice Chief Justice Checker here is serving as the secretary, and we will both hold those positions until you elect amongst yourselves our replacements. So this is kind of a little against the agenda, but I'm going to go ahead and swear all of you in before we do a roll call so that the roll call will accurately reflect the membership of the SSOC. So, if everyone who needs to be sworn in, which does not include Ellie Broker, Ronald Crinley, Tito Diaz, Aaron Hybert, Yovan, and Avin, please stand to be sworn in. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Arthur Nolan,
Affirm to faithfully support
affirm to faithfully support
the Constitution and bylaws
the Constitution and bylaws
of the Associated Students of Madison.
of the Associated Students of Madison,
And to faithfully discharge
and to faithfully discharge
my duties as a member
my duties as a member
of the ASM
of the ASM
Student Services Finance Committee
Student Services Finance Committee
to the best of my abilities.
to the best of my abilities.
I also affirm
I also affirm
to make decisions concerning
to make decisions concerning
the funding of student organizations
the funding of student organizations
other than the ASM
other than the ASM
in a viewpoint neutral manner,
in a viewpoint neutral manner
as required by law,
as required by law,
the ASM Constitution,
the ASM Constitution,
and the ASM bylaws.
and the ASM bylaws.
Finally, I affirm
Finally, I affirm
that I will maintain
that I will maintain
the highest standards
the highest standards
as a representative
as a representative
of the University of Wisconsin-Madison
of the University of Wisconsin-Madison
and will strive to fulfill
and will strive to fulfill
the student body's expectations
the student body's expectations
of my office.
of my office.
Thank you and congratulations. You may be seated. Will the acting secretary please take the roll?
Ruger.
Here.
Randall. Diaz.
Here.
Ellers.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Jarrett.
Here.
Lorraine.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Almstead.
Almstead.
Almstead. Nyberg.
Present.
Quinn.
Waliana.
Yes.
Here.
Rowland.
Here.
Schlitz.
Here.
Ed Navin. Here. Vine.
Here.
Great. Noting quorum, we will now move into open forum. Any member of the ASM shall have a right to speak at the open forum, subject to the time limit specified. Members of the ASM, or that means 3 minutes. So, members of the ASM who are not officers of the ASM shall take precedence over officers and appointees. Now, residents of the ASM may be granted the opportunity to speak by a majority vote of the SSFC members present. Each speaker may speak once for up to 3 minutes. The open forum is limited to 45 minutes unless the SSFC shall by default extend it. All right, first up on the open forum list, we have Laura Chekvich. You have 3 minutes. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Hi guys, I don't want to be on camera, so I'm just going to stand in front of it. But I was on SFC last year, and I just wanted to speak to the elections that you guys are going to have today, and to an issue that I hope you will all take very seriously over the summer and in the next few days too. So I'm here to give my support to Ed Booker for chair and Joe Van Haven for vice chair. Both of them have taken their time on SFC extremely seriously. They've spent the last few weeks catching up to make sure that they would be prepared for a smooth transition. Elliot is probably the most organized person I know, and for chair, the most important thing you can possibly be is organized, because you've got tons of groups who are sending emails about different things all the time. You have to make sure all the paperwork is straight all the time, and I really cannot think of a better person to do it. Joe has taken a lot of the things that are already in the vice chair's job description and started learning about them, including the issue that I'm going to talk about with the Student Transportation Board. That's an appointment that the vice chair has to do. He's also a good person to be in charge of all of the accountability liaison. The accountability liaison, because he's a people person, and I think he would make a good manager, so to speak, of that job. However, I think David is also running for vice chair, if I heard correctly, and I think David is also a great person. So if he manages to convince you to vote for him, I think he would make a good choice. Other than that, I want to talk about Student Transportation Board, which is a board that I devoted my soul to this last year. I don't know how much you all know at this point about shared governance, but this body takes it extremely seriously. And Student Transportation Board has been probably one of the most ignored committees this last year. We've fought really, really hard to make sure that there would be no cuts to safe service or to the campus bus routes, and we've been shut down every time. Today we had a win because we were given 5 hours notice on a meeting between the university and Madison Metro to cut the 81. There is going to be an email sent out to you all after this meeting that encourages you to show up to the public hearing on Wednesday to speak out against this. We have fully funded at the same level as last year the campus routes, and the transportation services, which is the university entity, has decided to cut anyway. And instead of cutting from the daytime service, which we requested, they're cutting from SAFE. They're also backing out of their part of the contract for Safe Cab. So that's another fight that will need to happen. So please take that very seriously. There are a couple of people who can be appointed to that committee. If you think that is something that you're willing to fight for,
Speaker's time expired.
James.
Uh,
you really only have to say do it and I'm done. So that doesn't need to happen.
Okay,
And I do open myself up for questions.
great. Are there any questions for the speaker? Does anyone object to yielding to student council representative Heidi Young?
Cool. So earlier today, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Earlier today, you sent out a really helpful sheet of talking points, and you also provided emails to a lot of administrators. I guess I'm worried, and I want to, I guess, try to speak for a general student, of is my voice simply going to be just a drop in the bucket, or should I actually send those emails out to those administrators?
I don't think your voice will be a drop in the bucket because I think it is extremely rare that I listed like the chancellor, the vice chancellor, dean of students, all of those names, including transportation and the director of housing. Those people don't get constituent phone calls ever. So if somebody takes the time to call or email them, it will be huge. They don't ever hear from students besides like the people on this body, let alone student council members, which is who I sent the other email to. You'll be getting the exact same email. It would be incredibly important, and they will take that seriously because it's not like calling a congressional office where they check your name or check next to the issue. This is totally different, and we will be influential if you let them know that these cuts are not going to be accepted by students.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. Next up on the open forum list is Mr. Megan.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations. I'm glad to see a lot of faces, both new and old. So I'm really happy for you all this year. I do apologize in advance. A lot of what I say might be classified as polemic, so I appreciate for any increase in blood pressure for anybody. So what I want to say is that the SSFC chair over the past 5 years has really been promoting this idea that their position as the SUFAC chair, the Segregated University Fee Allocation Committee chair, is equal to that of the student government chair. And this is in lieu of the fact that the ASM Constitution clearly states that the SSFC powers and duties as the Segregated University Fee Allocation Committee are to recommend. And they also spell out how the SSFC is a subordinate committee to Student Council, the ASM student government. And also, basically looking at the Constitution, it says in Section 3, Powers and Duties, that SSFC shall recommend in writing all allocations of segregated university fees to the SC. The recommendations of SSFC will be deemed recommendations of the ASM unless the Student Council shall by 2/3 votes within 4 weeks of receipt amends them, rejects them, or by majority votes refers them back to SSFC. Secondly, SSFC shall not recommend allocations unless they further the general student interest. And then E, SSFC may recommend to the SC for approval and without amendment, such bylaws or amendments thereto as may be necessary to govern SSFC operations. So the SSFC has but one power and one duty, according to the ASM Constitution and the UW System Policy F50, which I hope you all read up on, and that is to recommend items that further the general student interests to the ASM Student Council. And so it is the presiding student government body of UW which makes all final decisions and is therefore ultimately responsible for fee allocation decisions, the student council is. And this constitutional provision was authored with the specific intention to protect students' rights from what is called unbridled discretion, and that the Supreme Court noted this as relevant in students basically not being able to protect themselves. And you can imagine how important this preventative measure might be because in the case that a government intentionally acts in illegal and unethical ways in search of non-viewpoint neutral outcomes. And thus the remand of the Southworth case to Judge Shabazz in 2001, whose ruling demanded that adjustments be made to the ASM fee allocation policy and process to ensure that students were not granted unnecessary and inappropriate jurisdiction. And this was done as a preventative measure to defend students against the abuse that has taken place the past 5 years. And that culminated last year with MCSC being deemed ineligible. And so I just want to take a few quotes, and I'm probably going to be coming up on time here, so I would appreciate just a few more minutes of your time. But I'm going to start reading a few more quotes from different fiscal year reports that have been submitted by the SSFC chair. So one is from fiscal year 10, and it says that recognizing the allocable segregated university.
Recognizing Representative Bynes' motion to extend by 3 minutes. Is there a second? There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of extending speaker's time, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you all. So recognizing that the allocable segregated university fee expenditures could spiral out of control due to the manner in which funding was allocated previously, the SSFC decided to undertake major revision process last academic year to its eligibility criteria. To provide an analogy, the eligibility criteria function much like the doors to a bank vault. If the organization possesses the correct entry code, in parentheses, meets the criteria, they are provided access to funding. And then a couple other quotes say that essentially GSSF organizations function as student-run small businesses. And then a few more. And again, this is from the fiscal year 10 report that was submitted to the Chancellor. Said that the past 3 years have seen dramatic decreases in the GSSF. 954,000 in fiscal year 08, 671,000 in fiscal year 9, 694,000 in fiscal year 10. These decreases this year have occurred for two main reasons. The first reason is the implementation of our new criteria and covered previously under Section 2, which more narrowly defined which groups would be eligible to receive GSSF money. And these decreases represent a concerted effort by student government leaders and SSFC to adopt long-term strategies for the sustainability of the GSSF. These efforts are thus far proving effective. Another quote from fiscal year 12 report that was submitted last year, or 2 years ago now, or 2 sessions ago now by Chair Manis, said that over the past 4 years, the GSSF has seen a dramatic decrease of approximately $2.3 million, or 64%. These decreases represent a concerted effort by student government leaders and SSFC to adopt long-term strategies for the sustainability of the GSSF, along with a shift in the attitudes and ideological approaches present in the allocation of these dollars. These efforts continued this year and are thus far proving effective. And again, a concerted effort has been made and must continue to be made to maintain appropriate stewardship over these funds if the fund is to remain viable. The steps taken up until this year had resulted in a deep mistrust by GSSF groups of SSFC administration, stemming from the necessary hack and slash mentality that SSFC has taken in the eligibility and budgeting processes. This year has been a pivot point, however, because with a large portion of the abuse curtailed, efforts can once again be made to make the process more collaborative in nature. Great strides in this arena can be made in upcoming years. However, future chairs must remain vigilant and take all necessary steps to ensure these budgets remain at viable levels. How much time am I left?
You have about 20 seconds.
Okay. I think I will need probably another minute.
The motion to extend by 1 second. Okay, are there any objections? Seeing none.
Thank you all for your patience. So basically the fallout from this concerted group's policy and manipulation of the general criteria mandate is that RSOs such as Vets for Vets, which is a group that exists to organize around and empower veterans of armed services, can no longer exist primarily to service veterans. And the concerted group's policy manipulation has resulted in these organizations only being allowed to access GSSF annual funding if they focus the majority of their time, energy, planning, and resources on students who are not veterans. This intentional criteria change came when the original wording of the eligibility criteria was manipulated by the same concerted group of SSFC leadership who removed a two-word phrase, educational benefit, and replaced it with direct service. Now, this change called for more discretionary decision-making on the part of SSFC members. So as for each RSO, the SSFC members now have to figure out what a direct service looks like from the Campus Women's Center or Wangshik, which is the Native American coalition on campus. And the same mentality has been furthered in subsequent years when members of the same concerted group carried this philosophy into the culture of training new ASM students. The result of which is what we now have, a culture of fee distribution dominated by a small, concerted group of students who have effectively controlled the process and information cycle of fee distribution. All of this takes place in an... For sure.
The motion to extend by 30 seconds. Second, any objections? Go ahead.
Thank you. So all of this takes place in an environment where there are no individuals, staff, or students who have knowledge and expertise in handling student fees that were here to witness and oversee the implementation of the legitimate general criteria as policy mandates resulting from the U.S. Supreme Court approval of student fee distribution, which came from Southworth versus Board of Regents. So that's really what I wanted to say. I'll hand out also just a few of the different organizations that have been funded. Yes.
Second.
The motion to extend by 5 seconds and a second. Any objections? Go ahead.
Hold your vice chair accountable to the trainings that they need to put on, which is in their job description.
Speaker's time.
I open myself up to questions. Thank you all.
Great. Are there any questions for the speaker? Representative Brooker.
What kind of trainings would you expect from
For sure.
Vice Chair?
Absolutely. Obviously, VPN training, which is definitely been a figurehead in SSFC, and I'm glad that continues. But I would also look for more violation perspective, looking at the past since South Rift has come out, and really looking in depth at the different difficulties and successes that have arisen from the implementation of criteria. I think it would be beneficial for folks on this body to have historical perspective rather than just kind of going in blindly with what is expected of them. So more in-depth trainings on kind of policy and history.
Your follow.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Randall.
I was wondering you could point out where you're referring to in the Constitution about the either separation of powers or not separation of powers that you were talking to earlier.
For sure. I don't know if the necessarily separation of powers is necessarily what exists. It's simply laying out what the different committees work on. SSFC is a committee of ASM that does recommend allocations to student council. So I'm borrowing simply from the Constitution and in the specific sections where the student council and the SSFC are outlined.
Your follow.
Yes. Have you looked at Section 6, Powers and Duties, Section C?
Let's take a look. Section 6, you said?
Correct.
Powers and Duties C. I'll read it out. The SC shall establish bylaws and rules for the ASM by 2/3 vote at 2 consecutive meetings. To amend bylaws or rules shall require a 2/3 vote of 2 consecutive meetings subject to the veto power specified in this Constitution for SSFC and the student judiciary. I appreciate you pointing that out. Are you alluding to the veto power that SSFC has? Okay, thank you.
Would you say that veto power is a form of a separation of power?
Perhaps. I'm not sure. I haven't thought philosophically on that, but I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I guess I would like to know how that has been applied in the past. I would love to hear about that. But, yeah.
Are there further questions for the speaker? Are there any objections to yielding to ASM chair?
Are you aware that as the ASM Student Council Chair, in this session in general, will be recognizing the autonomy of the Student Service Finance Committee and the Student Judiciary as independent branches equal to that of Student Council and only answerable to the separation of powers laid out in the ASM Constitution?
That's definitely your prerogative to do so, and I'm glad that you can kind of clear the air on that right now. So duly noted. Thank you.
Any follow-up?
No.
Further questions for the speaker? Seeing no further questions, you can sit down. Thank you.
Thank you all for your patience.
Last up on the open forum list is Sarah Nygaard. Just so you know, I believe the technical Latin terms Chair Emeritus.
Hi everyone, congratulations on being on SSC. I just want to let you know that being on SSC is a profound responsibility because you allocate money of over $40 million of students' money. And this authority is granted to you under the Wisconsin State Statute 36095, which allows you the primary responsibility in the allocation of your student fees, which pertain to student life services and interests. And so with that encompasses student organizations, ASM's internal bodies, as well as entities such as the Union Recreational Sports, University Health Services, and Child Care Tuition Assistance Program. With that, I'm sure you are all excited to learn all the ins and outs of these processes. But without further ado, I kind of just want to pass you all to the standing rules that are in front of you. You will be voting on these on Thursday, and so I kind of just wanted to introduce you to them because I can't amend the agenda to introduce you to them right now. So these are, the standing rules are kind of the financial guidelines and eligibility guidelines that SFC uses in the first semester of its processes. So it pertains to eligibility, which is finding a student organization eligible for GSSF funds, and the budgetary cycle. And so with that, it just goes through the time that a group has to present, what SFC does internally, and kind of just also the job description of the legal counsel and accountability liaisons. I urge you all to look through these before next meeting because we will be voting on them, and I'm sure there's some members who are from last session's SFC that want to make some amendments. However, if you have any questions, I'm going to be opening myself up to after this meeting and before on the meeting on Thursday. I just think that there's just a couple things you should know before embarking on your journey in SSC. If you think you have an agenda, you don't. Many people come into this room thinking that they want to give money to a student group or they want to decrease segregated university fees. It doesn't work that way. Like a previous speaker has said, is that you have to remain within viewpoint neutrality to allocate money to student organizations, and that's mandated by the Southwest Supreme Court case. And I'd be happy to inform you, and I'm sure the next chair will as well. I motion to extend my time by 3 minutes.
Okay, motion and a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none.
Thank you. And so with that, if you come in thinking you know what you want to do, you don't, and you have a lot of learning to do, and as do I. With any committee branch in ASM, it's really important to keep your ears open, listen to what your peers have to say, and kind of just keep asking questions, and that's the most important thing. Also, you have to learn that you are part of the machine that runs this university. You all have a profound responsibility, like I said, to make decisions. However, you also get to benefit from those decisions because you are a student. So just pick your battles wisely because it will be sometimes incredibly frustrating. I also wanted to put up here right now to say that I voiced my support for Ellie Brooker as chair of SOC. Ellie was my secretary last session, and me and her worked very closely together. She is one of the most organized and hardworking people I know. I have taken the time to transition her from secretary to SSC chair these past couple months, and I will be with her all summer. So any questions she has, I'm sure that I will be a good resource for her as well. The support for vice chair is going to go to Joe Van Aven. Joe, like was said by a previous speaker, has been fulfilling all the vice chair responsibilities these past 12 months. He has also been an integral part of SFC's battle for psych field autonomy. And I think it's just really important with his work knowledge of some of the other entities within the university. And I think they're going to make a great team, Ellie and Joe. The only person I've heard that's running for secretary is Jonathan. And he has come up to me about wanting to fulfill the secretary role. I think he would do a great job. I know he's motivated. He has tried to speak with me countless times about being involved in ASM to a further extent. So I think it's really important for you all to take that into account. I am currently the chief of staff of ASM, but I will also be serving on SSC as a representative. If you all need anything ever, resources, contacts, information, I will be around. SSC has probably been one of kind of my proudest accomplishments on this campus so far. I'm only a sophomore, I know, but I have devoted many hours and man time to this body, as well as I really hope that SSC continues to fight for students across on this university, because last session's SSC was probably the most influential of student leaders I've seen in the past, I don't know how many years. So with that, I open myself up for questions.
Great. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none? Thank you. Now moving to item 3, swearing in members. We did that. Removal or impeachment of committee members, we have none. On item 4, adoption of the agenda. Are there any motions to amend or adopt this agenda? Representative Vines. Is there a motion to adopt? Is there a second? Second. Seeing a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting this agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Seeing none, this agenda has been adopted. Moving on to reading and approval of the minutes. This is a brand new session, so you have no minutes to consider. Moving into item 6, election of the chair. The floor is now open for nominations for chair. Representative Diaz.
Let's nominate him.
Seeing
Second.
that nomination in a second, Representative Booker, do you accept? I accept. Great. Floor is still open for nominations. Any further nominations? There has been a motion to close nominations in a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Are there any objections to closing nominations? Hearing none. One candidate, Representative Berger, has been nominated. We will now move into a 1-minute nominating speech from Representative Diaz.
Okay.
Unless you're.
No, it's fine. Alright, but, so I guess I nominated Ellie because I worked with her last year a lot, in terms of just being on this committee, and I think she is one of the best fit for this position. She takes the job very seriously. She like previously said, she's really organized. And I think also just a lot of work that she's been doing with the GSSS, which is kind of one of our main focuses on this committee. She contacted them all last semester and seeing where we could put on as a committee. And just doing that, I think alone just shows how dedicated she is to this committee. And I think in terms of her representing us as our chair, I think she'll do a good job. So, and in all my understanding, she's one of the perfect people for this job.
Thank you. Representative Brooker, you have 3 minutes to speak on your own behalf.
Sure. I wrote something because I want to make sure I say the right things here. Well, not stutter, I guess. So thank you for the nomination. To provide just a little background on my involvement in ASM, I've been engaged in a lot of facets. I served as secretary of the SOC. I was a representative on the Student Activity Center Governing Board, and I am currently serving as the lead on the Student Internship Services Procurement Board. I've kept up with student council issues, SJ cases, and the activities of the grassroots committees. And in the past year, I've built relationships with many GSS leaders, lots of our returning council members, and have reached out to a lot of the new council members. I've worked in the Budget and Finance Office of UHS, which is one of our non-eligibles, and I've built a positive working relationship with them. I've studied our bylaws in F50, and I think that Chair Nygaard can attest to the fact that I've asked countless questions to prepare myself for this role. Last year, I participated in an SOC that worked to improve the climate of our committee, and while we had some obstacles along the way, I think we made very important changes to our function. As chair of SOC, I would continue in this vein of positive change. However, I did not come to the 19th session with any agenda other than to ensure that fair decisions are made and that respect for groups and for each other is maintained. I believe that a source of many of the issues in the past years in ASM has been infighting between student council and SOC. I see SOC as an autonomous body, but there must be open lines of communication between student council. In order for ASM to be the most effective, its branches must work together. That said, the decisions of SOC are to be defended, and I will take that role very seriously. I've worked extremely hard over this past year to make myself knowledgeable and to fight for student empowerment on this campus, and I feel that I am well prepared for this position, and I can assure you that my commitment to this body is, and this organization is unwavering.
Thank you. We'll now move into questions for the candidate. Would anyone like to ask a question for the candidate? Any questions for the candidate? Fearless leader guy, I guess. Well, seeing no questions, Q&A is closed. We'll now move into debate on this candidate. Representative York.
I cannot think of anyone else I would rather pass the chairship to. I have full faith in Ellie Brooker, and I think she's going to do a fantastic job. And from record, the reason I did not ask any questions was because, as Ellie has said, we are in constant communication with one another, and I have been assured by her that she understands the responsibility with remaining to neutrality and also the integrity of these funds. So with that, I'm in full support of her.
Further debate on the candidate? Representative Hines.
No question.
The motion to call the question on this candidate, is there a second?
Second.
Are there any objections to calling the question this time? Seeing none? Okay, there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections to unanimous consent? Seeing none, are there any objections to this candidate? Seeing none, congratulations. And at this time, I'm going to call for a 5-minute recess for the transition of power. This body will reconvene at 7.
Ellie, did you see the chat? I must have. Did you? Someone did. Says Ellie explanation. Is this Ellie's preference?
I got some presents for myself today.
I call this meeting back to order. It is 7:09. We are still in the hearing room of the Student Activity Center, and Chair Brooker is presiding. Thank you. Next on the agenda is election of the vice chair. Before we move into nominations, I wanted to give you guys a quick overview of the job description of the vice chair, so you guys can ask appropriate questions. So the main duties of the SFC vice chair would be to work with the student transportation board, we chair those meetings, and also do trainings for GSS officers for our subs at large, and do outreach, as well as historically the vice chair has been in charge of the accountability liaison. So those are those main duties there. So the floor is open for nominations.
Nominate Representative Davis.
Is there a second?
Second.
Brian's consent.
I nominate Representative Madden.
Is there a second? Representative Madden, do you accept? Okay. Are there any more nominations?
Move to close nominations.
Is a motion to close nominations, second? Any objections? Okay. First, Representative Crandall, you have a minute to speak to Representative Vines.
So I've known Representative Vines for this year, and he's made many critical analyses of our processes as well as the decisions that our body has made. I think he's had a very fair and a good perspective on the decisions that this body has made, and also his opinions on this body. I think he's very he's a good neutral body on this body, and he also has a sort of always has an outside perspective on things that a lot of committee members might not always see. So I think he would do well as the vice chair.
Representative Vines, you have 3 minutes to speak to your
Hi, as I said, my name is David Vines. This is the second year that I'm going to be serving on this committee. I had a really great time at 19th session working with everybody here. And I think we did a really good job on 19th session. But one of the biggest things I want to improve on is communication between our body and GSF groups. I think a lot of times last year there was not enough outreach, there was not enough really face-to-face communication. So that oftentimes we would not be on the same page as other GSF groups, and that's when things would start to get turbulent. This also was really echoed with how the accountability liaisons last year were handled. By that, they were not handled at all. And so we kind of didn't have that position. There was a whole lot of student money that we just went to waste by not having an appropriate job description for people to fill those positions. So my real main priorities here as vice chair would be outreach to GSF organizations, making sure that we have an open line of communication to make sure that we know what so that they know what we are expecting of them, and that we can work better and reduce turbulence. I also think it's very important in terms of the vice chair job on Student Transportation Board to fight to make sure that we protect services like Safe Cab, and I'll work to make sure that we have a viable alternative if the Safe Cab service that was dropped last year isn't picked up again. And yeah, I hope you consider me, and feel free to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Representative Natter, you have a minute to speak to the nomination of Representative Van Allen.
Yes, thank you. Representative Van Allen served on SSC this past session. As soon as he got onto SSC, he was really interested in learning all the processes and policies that go into our day-to-day workings. Also, sometimes in SSC, debate gets pretty tense, and Representative Van Allen has this capacity of remaining calm, cool, and collected, which I think is so important for a leadership position. And so I think that would create great balance within the leadership roles of our current chair and our potential secretary. Also, Representative Van Allen currently sits on the Student Transportation Board. Right now, Safe Cab is kind of on hiatus. We don't really know what's going to go on. Students want to continue the service, however, Alan doesn't. I know Representative Van Allen probably knows more than any of us sitting on this body at this point knows. And I think he would be an integral part in the negotiations moving forward. Also, as somebody who had a vice chair who kind of dropped the ball on the accountability liaisons, I know that Representative Van Allen has worked with my old vice chair, and kind of moving forward has a lot of great ideas into kind of recreating position, as well as working with people who are interested in outreaching to GSF groups, and also increasing communication within groups and in SFC to understand our policies and processes related to allocation of student fees to student organizations. So with that, I'm in full support of Representative Van Allen, and I truly think he would make a remarkable vice chair of this body.
Representative Van Allen, you have 3 minutes to speak to your candidacy.
So, thanks, Sarah. I guess it took away a lot of what I was going to say. But, yeah, like she said, I kind of joined the Student Transportation Board halfway through last year, or halfway through our last session. And I think now it's actually the vice chair's job to chair those committee meetings. So as far as student transportation goes, I'm real comfortable with that. Another thing is she talked about, David talked about the student climate of this room. You can't, I don't be able to tell right now, but sometimes it can be pretty full and a little scary. Like I've talked up in front of the open forum and I'm on the committee. It can still be a little under. So I don't know. I think what I would offer more than anything is pretty level-headed approach. I keep things in perspective, and don't get rattled very easily. So, not saying anybody does, but I just think that that's something that's pretty valuable. And if you've got, people in a room that are, where tensions are high or whatever. So, other than that, I'm working with Sarah. I know you guys probably don't know as much about F50 just yet, but there's kind of a battle's a bit of a loaded term, but there's kind of a battle going on, or there will be for a long time, with the Board of Regents, and I'm working with her on that to make sure students are still in charge of our money, I guess, to put it simply. But other than that, I like to think I'm approachable, easy to talk to, and I think that I can help with the communication we have both amongst each other and with student groups that come to us for fun.
Yeah, what organizations are you involved with outside of ASM? And how will you use the knowledge that you're acquiring in those organizations to further your capacity as vice chair of SMC?
I haven't had a position with any of the GSSF groups. I've gotten services from a few of them. I mean, for the non-eligibles, I've been pretty involved with those, but I work for exports. I use a lot of the union services and have a lot of friends who work through the union. And I've been using it UHS like 1 or 2 times a year. So outside of that, I'm not really sure what you're asking. But I don't know what else you're asking outside of that, but I would probably have more experience with the non-eligibles than the GSSF groups. So.
I'm currently not involved with any GSF groups. I did do a little bit of work for Whisper my freshman year here, helping to get students out to vote. I'm also working with the Madison Student Vote Coalition, which is a part of ASM, which has done a really great job at getting ballot accessibility to students on campus for these, off-term elections. I did get a flu shot at UHS last year, so I got that. I go to the union.
Is there any objection to yielding to Student Council Vice Chair Indianapolis? Seeing none?
If you could be a kitchen utensil, which one would you be and why?
Representative Vines.
Well, Maria, if I were a kitchen utensil, I would probably be a slap chop. I don't know if you're familiar with the infomercials. A really versatile piece of equipment. And I really just think it represents my versatility in working with GSF groups, dealing with eligibles and non-eligibles. And I think it's really just a great symbol of how I share that at SMC.
Representative Van Houten.
Yes, these kind of questions at sports interviews. I would say I'm going to be more of a whisk, bringing people together rather than chopping them apart. No, but I really that's just a joke. I'm sorry. That's how this goes today.
Any other questions for the representatives of the members? Seeing none? Representative Necker.
Are you going? Yeah. Well, I definitely think that whisk comment told me. I truly believe both of these men would do a great job as vice chair. I've seen them work. I've seen them fool around in SSC meetings, and they're both right that we definitely did increase the kind of positive attitude in this room when we were dealing with hearings. However, I truly believe that Representative Van Houten is more prepared for this role. That is because at the end of last semester, I asked anyone who was interested in leadership positions to come up to me so I can help transition them. And the only 2 members of SSC that approached me were Chair Broker as well as Representative Van Houten. And with that, I think that they're fully prepared to immediately, after this meeting adjourns, to take on the full capacity of chair and vice chair. And so with that, I am in full support of Representative Marvin, and I would urge you all to vote for him as well.
Could we build a minute to represent see why you talked to Sarah about that?
Are there any questions to yielding to Representative Hines for that question? For how long?
A minute.
A minute?
So as an appointed member, I was not actually officially on this session of SFC until like 2 days ago. Also, until about a week ago, I was not entirely sure whether or not I'd be enrolled here for the fall semester. I'm now absolutely going to be here for the fall semester and all through next year. And so, you know, saying that I didn't have an official spot on SFC, I did not, you know, I didn't want to make any assumptions or approach like I'd been granted the right to be reappointed a second time. That being said, I think I've done my due diligence. I'm familiar with parliamentary procedure. I'm familiar with the rules of the last year, and I think I have, you know, the best record of outreach to GSF organizations and communications out of you know, anybody. And so that's why.
Are there any other points of debate? Seeing none, are there any objections to closing debate? Seeing none, debate is now closed. Secret ballot. The motion to secret ballot. You can't object to that, correct? Okay. So,
Apparently, isn't the majority vote now? They just figured that out at the first council meeting.
are there any objections to secret ballot? A vote for Representative Brandon Hobbins is Brandon Hobbins. A vote for Representative Hines is Hines. Right. Yeah, all right. Point of information. Yes.
And you also abstain.
Oh, you can also abstain. Sorry. Thank you. No.
Okay, Richie excited.
We should have my ID check when we're voting. No, Richie.
Alright, got questions for that. And so I
Class vote of 10-3, Representative Madden Allen, who are new vice chair for the eight. Do you need a motion for a 2-minute recess here, or everyone can stand in formal while we bring the new vice chair? Alright. Well, Representative Alright. Alright. So I'm gonna go over the job description of the secretary here, just so you guys have a short description of what that's going to entail. For the record, I'm not going to expect anyone who's interested in being secretary to have verbatim minutes. That's not a requirement, just so you know. The responsibilities of the SOC secretary are to take minutes at all meetings. Those minutes are to be sent out to the SOC by the next meeting so that we can approve those. I think you actually have 10 days if there were extended circumstances you couldn't get them sent out. But you have the secretary will need to take attendance at all meetings, keep the attendance records so that we can have those to process the stipends. You'll also be responsible for all open records requests. That is when a student on campus or a student organization on campus needs any kind of records pertaining to SOC, they will contact you and you will need to get them the pertinent records within 5 to 7 business days. All the filing office work is the responsibility of the secretary. There's a pretty organized filing system in the SOC office. It will be very easy to use. So you'll just be filing things 24 hours after the meetings in those filing cabinets. So without further ado, the floor is open for nominations for the secretary. Representative Vines.
I would like to nominate Jonathan Harris.
Is there a second? Second. Representative Harris, do you accept?
Yes.
Great. Representative Rowland.
I nominate Ellie Brooker.
Second.
Second, I do not accept. Thank you very much, Flo. I appreciate it. Are there any other nominations?
Motion to close nominations.
Motion to close nominations. Is there a second? Any objections? That nomination is closed. Representative Vines, you have a minute to speak to nominations.
Yeah, I talked to Jonathan earlier. He expressed interest in being a secretary, and I think that it's really great when we have people who are new to the committee want to step up and be in leadership positions for the first time. So that happened with a certain someone who was town chair last year, and I think he would do a really good job at it. I've been around associated with him from like UC conventions and other work earlier in the year, so he does have experience in ASM. I think he'll do a really good job, and I'm glad that we're going to give blood leadership.
Great. Representative Harris, you have 3 minutes to speak to your nomination.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jonathan Harris. I'm a freshman currently on campus. Just some of the work I've done so far this year. First semester, I was an ASM intern. I worked with the Shared Governance Committee to help improve more student seats on most of the committees. I'm also just keeping interest up in getting more general students to join committees. And then from there, I decided to run this year for SSOC. Last semester, I didn't do that much. I was doing some other work with some other orgs on campus. But pretty much, I'm able to work. That's why I decided to run for secretary. I like to listen. I like to talk. And anything you guys need, I will always be able to do. And as always, to the duties. I had a chance to talk with Chair Becker. And also I shared from last year, I represented NIBARD about the position. and the ASM staff to make sure that I was qualified to do the work, and I believe I am. I know I am. And that's all I have to say.
Before I now the question and answer, are there any questions for Representative Vines?
Do you have any prior experience taking minutes or operating with meetings that are in parliamentary procedure?
Yes, not taking minutes, but my senior year of high school, I was student in Board of Education, which is a special, it's pretty special for the state of Maryland. You represent the students of your county, and I had to work with Robert's Rules of Order there. Also, high school government, same thing. We were a little different. We had to work with Robert's Rules of Order. So I'm pretty familiar with it. I have to brush up on it, just like I think all of us do easy sometimes. But I am familiar with how it operates.
Are there any other questions?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Okay.
Representative Vines.
Do you think you'll be able to engage in debate as well as in the same time?
Yes, and that's the most important part. I'm gonna tell you right now, my minutes won't get as detailed as Chair Becker from last year. But the most important thing, I think, is still, along with being the secretary, definitely to make sure that you still give me input. That was the first thing I was appointed to do. So if it comes down to a point where I see if you give my input or recording something that was put down, I'm gonna have to give my input and just listen to the tape afterwards to make sure I got everything correct.
Right, then. Are there any other questions for the speaker? Seeing none. No objections. Hearing none, debate. Are there any questions for debate? Representative Vines.
I think Lieutenant Harris will do an amazing job as secretary. I think the job of secretary is very hard, and I think that if any person who's up for the challenge and is also ready to engage in debate and kind of what we do every meeting in this room, I'm really excited to see what he will do on this board, and I'm glad that he is looking forward to taking on the big responsibility.
Vice Chair Van
Unanimous. Second.
All right. There. All right, so there's been a motion to consent. Is there a second? All right. Are there any questions? All right. Congratulations.
Move for a 4-minute recess.
Second.
It's okay, that better be a real Wisconsin.
I got your drink.
Just a little bit.
Well,
Me?
Yeah.
You're part of the chair.
Yes.
Stand up, eat. I can imagine. Okay. Ellie, what else?
No, okay, it's my fault.
Ellie, what else do we have? I mean, because we don't have old new business.
You'll see.
Here's the chair. Well, we're really happy to for her elected as the chair.
Were all your family watching? Did you get text yet?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure everyone who's on that channel is your family.
How many?
I know anything, my grandparents are watching it.
If I would have mentioned anything to my parents, it would have been them trying to figure out how to do that. Like 2 hours.
I think I never thrown this iPad in the
You got pretty quick to the chat area of
How many people are on?
there was 7, but there's been 25 people. So.
Okay, you've seen Anchorman, correct? Okay. So I think this is how I feel looking to left and not taking service. Maybe you're not wrong.
You're clearly not familiar enough with it.
You don't know Anchorman well enough.
Well, I think, are you gonna last back?
No, it's just.
I wish he was.
looking very confused.
And I meant that wrong.
I know, that's what I was
Like,
confused,
like,
like,
I was confused.
Brian, you're messing up.
Yeah, because he's sitting to your left.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
That's why I'm like confused.
If you said 4 minutes, correct?
Yeah. Should be another couple minutes. Should be another couple minutes. We should extend it for them.
We have tomorrow?
No.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So we can extend it?
What?
I can extend it for like 2 more minutes?
We're not.
They'll be back, they should be.
If we're talking about kitchen utensils.
I just don't know when to do it.
You're only
No, let's do it.
Thank you.
not when you deny from eligibility taken on.
That's true.
He was like, when you first say eligibility, you should have 1 knock. If you not, you should have 2. I was like, you know.
Really awkward because like that was just before the MCSC meeting.
Yeah, and that's when he said that, I was, and then he was like, oh, it's not a roll the gavel, and I'm like, no.
Stop that conversation.
Yeah.
Right, you can really check Roger.
Why?
Just walking around. No, check.
Stop it, it's a tax refund. And my last 2 paychecks.
Why do you ask for, like, you really just automatically deposit? Like, there's an option.
She doesn't trust.
Call the meeting of Student Services Finance Committee back to order. It is 7:37 p.m. We are still in the hearing room of the Student Activity Center, and Chair Booker is still presiding. We are on to the whole business. We have none. New business, we have none. Report of the chair. So congratulations to all of you. Welcome to 19th session SFC. I hope you're all super excited. So with the standing rules, what I would like you all to do is to look over them in the next couple days. We are going to have a meeting on Thursday. So if there are any changes that you want to make, have something written up for any proposed changes. Otherwise, you're ready to approve those. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or any of the other veteran members of MSC. I think they're all pretty straightforward, but if you have questions, feel free to ask. I think that's, to kind of go through the duties of just those of you that are just members of SMC. I will expect that you're all respectful and attentive during meetings, especially when we have students speaking in open forum, groups presenting your eligibility applications or budgets. We do not have a rule against computers, against having your computer out. However, there are violation forms, so if you are using your computer inappropriately during any point during the meeting, that's not okay. So please refrain from using Facebook, Twitter, anything that is not related to SLFC during the meetings, especially when students or student organizations are speaking. We owe them our respect. I think that that's all I have. So, for the vice chair. Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any questions for the chair? Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. Joanna, our advisor, for those of you who haven't met her, this is Joanna. She is our wonderful advisor. You will love her. She's going to hand out your payment information. Please make sure you fill this out ASAP and get it to Anju, correct?
Well, kind of. So if you are returning to SFC and you have served SFC in the past, you only need to complete the student employee information form. So I'm just going to pass the whole stack around. So if you've been here and you've already been on it, just take this. That's that around. Yeah, that's on. If you are new to SFC, take one of these little packets. They are separated by the yellow half sheet of paper. You're going to follow that. So if you didn't know, you do get a stipend for serving in SFC. You get $20 a meeting. But you are getting paid just like anyone else who works on campus is getting paid. So you have to submit all of the paperwork like anyone else does.
So this is where things can get slightly more complicated. If you currently or recently, like in the past year, either got paid by ASM, got paid by a GS assessor, is that anybody? Okay. Okay, so I'll skip that. If you have another job on campus, you could skip the form that is your direct deposit form because you are already getting direct deposit from your current job, right? You should all probably, that's the only way you can pay these days. If you want to be safe, you can just turn in all the forms. You have to turn them in to someone who is employed by ASM as opposed to our student leaders, because although they are your supervisors, ASM is your employer. So we have to sign off on it. You must turn this in within 3 days of today. Today is your start date. The tricky thing about that is for your I-9 form, where you have to submit 2 forms of ID, we can only accept originals. So I know that's challenging for people if you don't have the proper IDs with you here in Madison. If you don't have them here in Madison and you can't get them here within 3 days, it is not the end of the world, but you will not be able to get paid for any meeting until those are received. So if you can't get it here within 3 days, you will not get paid for this meeting or the meeting on Thursday. That's really out $40 for the absence of those things. If you can get it within 3 days, you will make $40 this week. Does that make sense? Is that what you have to do? So the student employee information form for the returning people, you can give it directly to Sherbrooker. Everything else, you can bring it in one packet, and you can really hand it, if there's someone working at the ASM front desk, you can give it to them. Otherwise, you can come into the ASM office, which is the second staff office, and either onto where I can see. Okay? Are we good? The helpful yellow sheet tells you just what to do, so just follow that. And if you already have it, just have it. All right, that's it.
Thank you. Just to clarify, you would need a packet sandwiched between the yellow sheets if you have not previously been paid by ASM.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions for the chair?
Is there any chance you could send us an electronic copy of the manuals after tonight's meeting, please?
Yes. Like the same copy that you did. Yes, I can do that.
Not required to take the second.
No, you're not.
No, you are not required to take the second.
If your ethical ideology for you being paid credit work, then you can become it.
Are there any other questions for the chair? Okay, with that, we are on to the report of vice chair. Vice Chair Manhattan.
If anybody wants to come have fun with me tomorrow, I'll be at the Student Transportation Board meeting. It's at 5:30. Other than that, that's actually the last meeting of the year, so that won't pick back up till the fall. But if you're interested, let me know. That's it.
Are there any questions for the vice chair?
Do you know what you guys are you going to be discussing any like of the cuts of the 81?
That's probably the biggest thing we'll be talking about on the agenda today. So I haven't gone through that.
Do you call? Are there any other questions for the vice chair? Seeing none, we are on to ASM Student Council report. Anyone from ASM Student Council would like to report representing my work?
Well, I resigned from ASM Student Council yesterday, but other than that, we made 2 changes at SFC passed from 18 session. One is a change to our definitions within our eligibility criteria. It's allowing a service that is educational, tailorable, and requestable, that is iterated several times on dates that the group sets to be considered considered a direct service. This is very different than it had previously been when those dates set by the group could not be considered direct service. So that'll be the new upcoming eligibility here. Also, we passed policy violation bylaws that kind of delineate between all the different policy violations. So before we just had kind of standardized, if you break one rule, this is what happens. Break a second rule, this is what happens, on and on and on. Now we have differences between wage violations, advertising violations, and official policy violations. So if you want any of those documents, I'm sure Chair Brooker can provide them to you, or you can ask anyone else. That was the 8th session.
Anyone else from the student council? Or from Canada?
yet. Basically, we also passed a huge update to the student judiciary bylaws, and it really clarified a lot of the student judiciary processes and made it more transparent, as well as the election bylaws. We also tabled the two-revote votes budget alteration until this summer.
Anyone who will be here this summer that knows about other fun or other things that we have for voting processes in your like other programs, we'd love to hear it in ASM because some people are wondering what other programs we have, if there's a need for turbo vote or not, so that's what we table it.
Anyone? Okay. We're on to adoption of the summer calendar. If someone could motion to move the roll through. All right. So for this, basically, I want to get an idea of whether you guys. I'm not going to be here over the summer. I'll be in DC. So, Vice Chairman Alvin is going to be chairing the meeting from June and July. What I'd like to get from you guys is if you would prefer to have those two meetings on a weekday in the evening or on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. So I guess we can like raise hands or something. I don't know if you kind of want to get an idea of what people are thinking. So.
The staff is closed on Saturdays of the summer, so if you would like that, we'd have to move to the evening.
I think we should do weekday afternoons. It works, it worked pretty nicely last year, and
I can't do weekday afternoons. I think I have class till 3 or 4 for so I could do weekday nights like later after dinner, or I can do weekend.
I think we should do the same day as student council, which just makes it a lot easier for a few of us who are already coming down here several times. She's getting the days.
Thank you.
afternoon would be like 6. Does this close? Do we know what time this place closes over the summer? 5.
That would be those.
7 this summer.
Well,
7, but we can meet in the union.
Yeah.
That's not overwhelming.
the ones that we're doing for student council are on Saturday or Sunday, so we have to meet it again.
I think the 14th of June is 65.
I thought it was the 16th.
Or yeah,
I'm gonna confirm.
16th, July 14th, yeah.
Okay, I just want to get a vote if we would prefer weekday evenings or Saturday or Sunday afternoons, because we're gonna have to work with Vice Chair Van Alvin's schedule, and one of those days does not work for him. So, you guys can just like raise your placard if you would prefer Saturday or Sunday afternoons. And if you would prefer weekday evenings. Okay, that's a tie. All right, I'm gonna read the tie.
Either works, just specific.
Great. Okay. Yes.
The meetings of student council are June 16th, July 14th, and August 8th. That's in most likely be.
Okay. No, put down. Yeah. All right. Vice Chair Van Alven and I will just pick some dates that are viable for him and send out a dual poll. I will send that out by tonight. Please answer that before Thursday's meeting so that we can adopt the summer calendar. I'll also send something out as far as the retreat. I would like to hold part of the retreat yet in May before I leave to train you all on Robert's Rules of Order and some of our policies with regards to GSS.
You mean May after finals?
Yes.
Okay. No problem.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said before May. I meant like before May is over. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I just made sure that you meant the after finals.
Yes. right, that,
I move to postpone. Till the next meeting.
And that is postponed to the next meeting. Adoption of the fall calendar,
Remember,
I motion to adopt Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 PM in the hearing room this
Second.
any objections?
We discussed other options.
Yes.
I motion to move out of rules.
Second.
So you can discuss other options, however, other committees meet in this room other days of the week. So Mondays and Thursdays are usually times that we've had, because let's say you have a Monday, Wednesday schedule and a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, and you miss one of those days, so you're not gonna miss both of those days. And that's why it's been on that rotating basis. Tuesday is fine, we has this, Monday, student council has this. So there's not that much flexibility, but I'm sure enough time
Do we know if the two students that aren't here that are on SSFC can make those times? Or are there conflicts for both of those days? Because I know law students.
I can't speak for either of them. I would assume that Representative Diaz is aware of the schedule from last year.
Yeah, the schedule we're working on last year, we really don't have that much flexibility, and I think coming at the time that really works better for people. I mean, I mean, anybody can kind of hypothetically, this is gonna be best for the day.
I don't have a problem with this time. I think we should postpone it to make sure that the two people that aren't here right now could make those meetings, especially how important these meetings are. And I think we should just postpone it till next time, and then we can decide.
Yeah, that's fine, I just wanna make sure, just if anybody here, just in case that somebody's here today that wasn't here, that might not be here on Thursday. Does anybody here have a problem with Tuesday, or Monday, Thursday, 6:30 PM? Major numbers? Right.
I plan to schedule around those days, so I can't really make that the other day.
As did I, person of member.
Yeah, I usually have chapter for my sorority on Mondays, but I choose to miss it because this is a bigger commitment and more important. So let's say if you do have prior commitments, you have, decided that you wanted to be involved in this body, and most people even during their interviews were told that those were gonna be the time, so I would also be conscientious of that.
There a motion to move back into
Second.
I motion to postpone till next meeting. Oh, we're on?
Yeah, we are.
I thought we were. Okay.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah.
And Vice Chair. There's a motion to postpone, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any objections? All right. Then we are adjourned at 7:54. Next meeting will be this Thursday at 6:30 PM, the hearing room of the Student Activity Center. Please be there. And
Closing roll.
And please stay for closing roll.
Yeah.
What?
Present.
Yes.
I just.